an international flavour for the Agip Trail, final round of the South African Rally Championship. Following the suspensions of Cyril van der Merwe and Enzo Keen, Daewoo had pulled off a coup by securing the services of two top-line drivers from Europe.
It was mainly because of a court ruling where the two of them were excluded from partaking in the last event. But it's given us the opportunity to bring in international drivers, first time in 15 years. I look forward to the event, and I think it will be a fantastic event for Daewoo and also for motorsport in South Africa.
Scotland's Robbie Head, who drove for Renault in the British Series this year, was paired with Keen's regular navigator Guy Hodgson, and Sweden's former World Rally champion Stig Blomqvist had Frans Boshoff reading the notes.
Yeah, the car feels very stable. We're just working a bit on the tyres at the moment. This track is quite muddy and slippy at the moment, but yeah, the braking and the engine all seems very good. So yeah, at the moment, I mean, obviously with the 1200 weight kilo that we run in these cars, it's not as fast as the cars we're used to in the UK, but yeah, I mean, it's a good package.
Volkswagen's Jannie Hubbig held a narrow lead over reigning drivers champion Serge Damso in the Toyota, while the sideline Van der Merwe held third. Boshoff was at the top of a rather confusing navigator's points table as Vita Bonafide headed Douglas Judd by a point.
Well, you know, at the beginning of the season we were full of hope, but after halfway through the first event it all turned into a serious train smash for us. And it's been a hard struggle for the rest of the season just to sort of claw our way back into some sort of a position. And as things stand today, I think we need to be fairly happy with our position as it is at the start of this event.
The AA Kyle Army racetrack in Midrand hosted the Agip Trail on the same day as the Nashua Superbike test against Australia, and there was a huge crowd watching as the crews readied themselves for the start, which saw each car complete 2 laps of the 4.2 kilometre circuit. Although there was a lot at stake, a friendly atmosphere prevailed despite a protest regarding the status of the event. The midday start saw cars started at pairs at 15-second intervals, which gave the drivers a rare opportunity to race against each other, while the co-drivers didn't have too much to worry about apart from making sure the driver completed the correct number of laps. Most of the crowd had never seen a rally car in action either, so all round it proved to be a successful exercise in bringing the sport to the masses. From AA Kyle Army, which the drivers thoroughly enjoyed, the event headed northwest to Swartkops on the western side of Pretoria.
Yeah, it's quite an enjoyable stage, I must say. It's a pity we caught up some of the trucks and some of the slower cars, but anyway, made it all interesting.
And you're happy with the way the car's going?
Yes, yes, the car's actually handling very well. The setup we've done for the tarmac actually works quite well.
Here, drivers completed 4 laps, and with cars starting at 1-minute intervals and a good lap time of the 2-kilometre track in the region of a minute, there was bound to be traffic for each driver to contend with. Damso was a former touring car and works Group N pilot, so knows the intricacies of Swartkops, and it wasn't a surprise to see him going well. By comparison, Hubbig's experience of race circuit is limited, and he lost a bit of time to his championship rival on each stage. It was only seconds, but remember that the VW Rally earlier this year was only won by 4 seconds. Paolo Piazzamosso and Nick Haddon hustled the Sassel Ford Escort around to record the fastest time, ahead of Damso, whose time was matched by that of Blomqvist in the Daewoo. The Escort is well suited to tarmac, and with developments to the engine, it looked visibly faster than anything else down the long straight. Further back, there was a great tussle going on in Class S18. Heading the pack were JP Damso and Pierre Aris in the Team Total Toyota Conquest, and the Danier version of Hogan Fechen and Dave Lukowitz. Both were being chased by the Formula 2 Golfs of Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding and Terry Brandt and Marty Olivier. Not far adrift was the Toyota of Berto Mostert and Andre Vermeulen, who came out ahead of the pack, which now included the Team Total Golf of Natal Rally champions Tony Ball and Brian Duncan. It was a busy place as 56 cars took to the circuit. Some clearly weren't used to the precise lines needed on a race circuit. Others found the pace too fast. John and Cherry Sanders retired their Group N Hyundai with a blown motor and were joined by the Golf of Dirk Badenhorst and Carolyn Swan, which suffered the same fate. Ben and Isabel van der Westhuizen were quietly going about their business, and their Group N Daewoo sounded healthy as they headed a gaggle of other cars. Looking totally out of place was the V8-powered Pennzoil Land Rover of Cliff Barker and Malcolm Joubert. Just a week earlier, it had finished a grueling 1,000-kilometre Roof of Africa rally in Lesotho.
Paolo, you've done a lot of development work on this car and you're running in Class S, don't you? What have you done?
Well, we didn't really do much development. We had a problem with a Formula 2 engine a couple of days before the event. So we put in the new kit engine, which is homologation for next year. And we put on some shock absorbers from the tarmac, which is what they use in the UK. And we just set it up in that way.
And that forces you to run in S20?
Unfortunately, yes, because the kit rules only allow us to run next year. It's not really what we wanted to do. We wanted to finish the season in F2, but unfortunately this was our spare engine, which we had converted, so we had no choice but to go this week.
Stage 3 took place at the impressive vehicle testing facility of Geritech, which lies between Hartbeespoort Dam and Pretoria. Despite Damso opting for the cautious approach at the water splash, the Toyota still came out of it with a misfire as Hubig blasted through without slowing at all. Class S18 champions Etienne Lawrence and Robert Paisley had had some tyre problems on their Team Total Toyota, but also took no risks. Head and Hodgson attacked with vigour and went on to record the fastest time for the 4-kilometre special stage. In the Ford Escort with Piazza Mosso as he heads around the blind corners and down the hill towards the water splash. A quick down change and he powers through as the wipers come on to clear the screen. Fecken and Lukowitz blast through and find the surface rather slippery as they turn into the following corner. Ball shows total commitment, and so does our cameraman and fellow KwaZulu Italians Cliff Blackman and Johan Klaassen in the Group N Nissan Sentra. The foot in die hook approach was definitely the most popular method, as Keith Coleman and Uwe Koch demonstrate. Group N frontrunners Dean Saunders and Graham Hooper slow, but then change their minds and accelerate all the way through in their conquest. For the Land Rover crew, it was a case of what water splash? Back at the service area, Robbie Head seemed to be enjoying himself.
Robbie, that was a scintillating stage.
Yeah, good. It's quite like a stage back home in Millbrook, it's called. We did it in RAC. It's a testing stage, very similar, all mountainous with adverse cambers, so a bit different, not having pace notes right enough, but we had a good time.
From Geritech, the rally moved to the industrial area of Roslyn and 10 kilometres of long straights linked by 90-degree corners. It was a case of keeping at maximum RPM for as long as possible and not making any mistakes in the corners, and it was a Toyota which recorded the fastest time. Following Piazza Musso's change of class, Van der Valt's only opposition in the Formula 2 came from Brands Golf, and Van der Vault held the advantage at this point. Class S18 cars are not much slower than their Formula 2 counterparts, and Fecken was flying as he tried to shake off the advances of JP Damso. Blackman was going great guns in the 2-litre Group N Sentra and was being chased by Sanders and Hooper in the smaller engine Toyota. Also in the hunt for Group N honours was the Toyota of Marius Loubser and Derek Sullivan.
JP, this rally is turning into a close tussle between you and Fecken.
Yeah, because I prefer the tarmac, and he's also quite good on the tarmac. But tomorrow I think Etienne will give us a go on the gravel again.
Why do you think Etienne's been off the pace today?
I think because Huggins had some practice. He had a tarmac rally a couple of weeks back. And I've done some tarmac racing, and I don't think Etienne's had any real racing experience on tarmac.
After the long straights of Roslyn, it was time to do another 4 laps of Swartkorps, this time in the opposite direction. Most drivers agreed that it was very different from the usual direction, and some even thought it was better. When the circuit was first opened in 1961, it ran clockwise, and changed to the familiar anti-clockwise direction when it reopened in 1987. Now, of course, the venue is once again closed for racing, a great pity as it's a popular venue. The fastest time was recorded by Damso and Bonafide. Smoke from Brands Golf was a portent of things to come as the event took on the look of a race rather than a rally. Meanwhile, Blomqvist had picked up a slight misfire on his Daewoo.
Stig, that got very close between you and Robbie.
Yeah, it was, but I had a problem with the car here. It was a lot of misfire, so it's no chance to catch him, because when I needed power, I didn't have any.
The rally returned to AA Kyalami for the final stage of the day, 4 laps in reverse with a distance of 17 kilometres. Damso held a narrow 3-second lead over Piazza Musa and Haddon. Nothing changed though as the rally timekeeping clocks went haywire and forced the organisers to scrub the stage. Nevertheless, it did provide entertainment for the race fans who were enjoying season end celebration parties at AA Kyalami. Habig was giving it his all to stay in touch with Damso and the pair of Daewoo's. It was almost like a Group N race as Fecken and Ball had a good close ding-dong. Wonder what their navigators thought of it. Great camera work there from Johan Dierhoff as he captures a Daewoo in full flight. The team total golf of Barry Krobler and Mike Burrows was chased home by Mostert and Vermeulen, while Cliff Barker described the big Land Rover's handling on racetracks as different. Still, it was a strange sight as he humbled more than a few pucker rally cars. There again, how many rally cars would finish a Roof of Africa? By the time the tail enders arrived, darkness was setting in and lights were switched on. Another off-road racing vehicle was the big creepy crawly Ford. It too had been competing in the Roof a week earlier, and marketing supremo Arthur Abraham took it for a quick spin. Drive magazine's editor Adrian Burford made his rally debut at the wheel of Toyota's Bucky entry, which had been rallied by Kasi Kutsia and Richard Leek on selected events during the course of this year. At the end of the day, Damso and Bonafide were 3 seconds clear of the Escort, which, as a Class S20 entry, was unable to score points. Championship leader Habig was 5th, but effectively 2nd, as it was doubtful if the imported Daewoo drivers would be eligible for points. While Saturday had been dry, competitors awoke to torrential rain on Sunday morning.
Paolo, you start this morning in a very strong position. How are you going to treat today in the rain?
I think today will be a bit of a lottery. Unfortunately, with all this rain, the roads will be very treacherous. And I think it'll be a bit of a gamble, because if you go a bit hard, you're going to fall off. If you go a bit slow, you're going to get off the pace. So it's to find that fine balance, I think, is going to be tricky.
A 4-kilometre combined gravel and tarmac stage using car parks and access roads at Kyalami was the first test before the event moved on to pure gravel stages. Damso and Bonafide were gunning for their 6th consecutive title for Toyota and immediately stamped their authority on the event by recording the fastest time in a masterly display of smooth driving. It wasn't a good start for the Ford crew as they lost 8 seconds to their Toyota. Still, Damso was only 11 seconds ahead of them, and there was a whole day's rallying still to go. Head wasn't hanging about in the Daewoo and got to grips with the terrain to record the 2nd fastest time, only 2 seconds slower than Damso. Meanwhile, his teammate Stig Blomqvist in the Van der Merwe car was in trouble as an electrical problem caused him to stop and lose 2.5 minutes. Habig was intent on closing the gap to his championship rival and matched Head's time of 3 minutes dead. Back at the Daewoo camp, there was frenzied activity as technicians set about tracing the intermittent electrical fault on Blomqvist's car. The traditional rally stages kicked off with a muddy 11.9 kilometre test on the outskirts of Bronkhorstspruit between Pretoria and Witbank. It was a taste of what was to come, and those in the front of the field had the advantage. Cars further back would have to contend with chewed-up roads that were much more slippery. Our in-car camera shows just how much surface water there was, and it was still raining. A hovercraft would have been ideal. Damso and Bonafide's first encounter with deep standing water cost them dearly. Head was on a charge. He'd competed on the Castrol Rally a few years back behind the wheel of a Ford Sierra Cosworth, and although he showed a lot of pace, never made it to the podium. This time, he wanted to win. He was followed by teammate Blomqvist, now without the misfire, who recorded the 2nd fastest time for this stage. JP Damso was also charging and took almost half a minute off Fecken and Lukowitz to move into the Class S18 lead. They won this class on their debut in the Tour Natal Rally in March. With Brand out of the event, there was no real opposition for Chart van der Walt and Cindy Harding, but they were chasing a podium finish and points for Volkswagen's Manufacturers' Championship aspirations. Mostert and Vermeulen were reveling in the conditions, and some fine driving saw them in contention for the Class S18 honours. With lots of rain about, conditions for servicing weren't very pleasant.
Serge, that was the first real test of this rally. What was it like?
Quite slippery and a lot of water lying around. So, one of the puddles we almost actually stopped, you know, the water gone into the air filter, so we're just actually quite lucky we got out of that stage.
How much time do you think you lost?
I must have lost a good 20 seconds, I reckon.
It was going to be a fight for survival, as Piazza Mussa discovers that control can be regained, even if it looks to be totally lost. It didn't seem to upset his rhythm at all, and he was soon back in the groove, but had lost valuable time. Watch how the road surface changes from firm but wet gravel to deep mud puddles without warning. It's commonly regarded as a rally driver's nightmare. If the surface changes halfway through a corner, the consequences can be severe. Blomqvist's car was back in peak condition, and the Swedish veteran showed the skills that took him to World Rally Championship. He needed to make up 2 minutes plus and wasn't about to give up trying. Likewise, Jannie Hubig needed to keep Damso in his sights if he was to keep his championship hopes alive. Later at this stage, the Golf got water into its electrics and he lost more time to Damso. Damso Jr. found time for a quick spin and didn't waste time with a three-point turn to get back on the road. After severe tyre wear problems on the opening day, Lawrence and Paisley found themselves way down the order. They're fighters, and it wasn't long before they started climbing back up the leaderboard. Meanwhile, Hubig's crew attempted to waterproof the Golf's electrical system.
Jannie, you lost time in that stage.
Yeah, this thing got water in the distributor cap, and it was misfiring for the last 2 kilometers on the stage, so it's really annoying me at this stage. I think it's time for Douglas to start holding on.
In Woodbank, the conditions were even worse. An early storm had uprooted blue gum trees and torn roof sheeting off buildings, and it was still raining heavily. Piazza Mussa did a good job, but it was the Daewoo pair that featured at the top of the timesheets as Robbie Head beat Blomqvist by 11 seconds. These two were almost a full minute quicker than the escort, and Damso got stuck and then indulged in a quick roll, all of which cost him 2 minutes. With the roads having been freshly graded for the event, banks had built up at the sides and knee-deep puddles soon formed. As the day wore on, so the conditions got worse. JP Damso's hopes disappeared on this stage when his Toyota drowned. Fecken and Lukowitz were luckier. They too got stuck, but were able to get going after losing 10 minutes. One can always depend on Chart van der Walt. He has an uncanny knack of getting cars to the finish, and he was showing a good turn of speed as well. Others had better ideas. Why not drive around the deep puddles? Mostert and Vermeulen proved that it can be done. Another team to get stuck on this stage was the Team Total Golf pairing of Barry Krobler and Mike Burrows. Like Fecken, they lost 10 minutes. And just look at that rain. Hall and Duncan navigate their Golf through a deep channel. It was to no avail though, as it was the last stage they completed. Damso arrives and his dedicated crew gets stuck in to get the Conquest back into shape.
Serge, what happened?
Well, we got stuck in the water a couple of times. The water's so deep in there. And then we were trying to avoid the puddles, but jumping the little hump, and the car just flipped right over.
Doesn't look like there's much damage to the car.
No, basically the door, I think. That's all I've seen so far.
While others were dropping out like flies, Lawrence and Paisley were mastering the conditions and climbing up the order rapidly. Blackman and Klaassen also succumbed to the conditions when water got into their Nissan's motor and it came to an abrupt stop with bent conrods. Another crew due for an early bath was that of Port Elizabeth traffic officer Keith Coleman and Uwe Koch. This was Christo Ackerman and Andre Pfeiffer's home event, but the rally gods weren't lenient on them as their Golf retired after stage 10. Pierre Goosen and Ossie de Jong are another consistent team. Their 1600cc Golf is reliable and they got through. Nico Higgs and Menno Havelaar have come a long way this year, and like Goosen, they also passed the test. Without a limited slip diff, the Group N cars are at a huge disadvantage in conditions like this. Yet Labsche and Sullivan were succeeding where others were failing. British rallying conditions are often described as being the toughest in the world. We caught up with Robbie Head.
Robbie, you've established yourself at the front of the field.
Yeah, it looks like it. Conditions are very difficult. I mean, it's probably more like a safari rally, and I've never driven in anything like this before.
Damso suffered more problems. The clutch and diff on the Toyota was taking a strain, and almost a full hour of lateness was used before the Toyota was back on the way again.
Whammy, this must be every team manager's nightmare. What happened?
No, we don't know what happened. We're still trying to find out what happened. It is a problem, yes, but I suppose that's part of rallying and part of motorsport. We run risks, we have atrocious conditions like we had today. Rain, mud, we just haven't had snow yet. And we still have about 28 minutes, so maybe we can still fix it and pull something out of the hat here. We hope.
Well, that's one way of getting photographers out the way. And Damso powers past a traffic jam of abandoned cars on stage 12. Co-drivers have many uses. Derek Sullivan is given the task of finding a route through a puddle, and Loebscher drives past Damso's stuck car. That could mean the end of Damso and Bonafide's championship chances. And for his efforts, Sullivan gets a face full of mud. Ben van der Westhuizen is an acclaimed mud specialist, but almost gets it wrong here. But no harm done, and he carries on towards the Group N championship crown. Eventually Damso gets going, but not quite under his own steam. Adrian Burford was giving Robin Houghton a ride of his life and doing a good job in the almost standard Hilux. Afterwards he said that he'd never spent so much time sideways in his life. Now that's commonly known as maximum attack. It seems to work. Looks impressive too, as Jan Delport and Fani Bukers demonstrate. But there was high drama for Hubig.
Yanni, what happened?
We got stuck in one of those famous water puddles, and it started, obviously got a lot of water inside, and it just wouldn't start, so we got going after a while.
Serge, you had more problems.
Yeah, we got stuck in this last stage for 10 minutes again, so I think we're time-barred by now, so I think we're just going to call it a quits.
Is that your season over then?
Yeah.
Conditions in the service park were not much better, but service technicians are a tough breed, hard-working as well. At last there was no more mud in the final stages with tarmac sprints in Witbank and Pretoria, and less than half the number of original starters made it. By now the rally was all over bar the shouting, and really it was just for the spectators' benefit, although Piazza Musso won the Witbank stage ahead of the Daewoo's. Douglas Judd must have been expecting more mud and water as he looked ready to get out and push. The final stage saw the Daewoo's dominate, head beating Blomqvist by 4 seconds as Piazza Musso lost almost 4 minutes and Becken had a wild moment. It was twisty with high curves to catch out the unwary and daredevils, but there were no more casualties as everybody was trying to get home and dry. Nikolai Hodgson were convincing winners over Stig Blomqvist and Frans Boshoff, while Pietro Musso and Nick Haddon did a sterling job in taking third. Lawrence and Paisley's polished performance saw them take fourth place ahead of unsung heroes Van der Walt and Harding, while Hubig claimed the championship in sixth. Barker and Jabeur used their four-wheel drive advantage to claim an impressive 10th. Goosen and de Jong won the Class S19 title by taking 11th ahead of Group N champions Ben and Isabel van der Westhuizen in the Daewoo.
Yeah, fantastic. The cars ran very reliably the whole day, all day yesterday as well, and it's been difficult conditions for us here, but thanks to the Daewoo team and to Guy, perfect job, and it's nice to have a win.
For Jannie Hubig, it was a deserved title, and he savoured the moment. Volkswagen also claimed the manufacturer's title from Toyota, with Daewoo the only other serious contender in third place.